Hi, and welcome to another episode of Bold Talk. Today I want to talk about judgments. Our society today seems to have a lot of misconceptions about what judgments actually are. A lot of times when you're watching TV or you're listening to the news and you hear somebody make a judgment call on somebody else, you hear phrases like, "It's none of your business. You don't judge me. Leave me alone. It's my business." And one of the most misquoted verses in the Bible is Matthew chapter 7 verse 1. People quote this all the time. Judge not that you be not judged. They will quote that not even knowing really where it is in the Bible, but they will quote it all the time when people try to make judgment calls on what they're doing or how they're living their lives. But what did Jesus really mean when he said, "Judge not that ye be not judged"? Did he really mean that we're not supposed to make judgment calls at all in people's lives or in life in general? I think if we go back and take a look at Matthew chapter 7, we'll have a better understanding of what Jesus was really trying to get across there. Now, Matthew chapter 7, if you have a Bible, go ahead and turn there. Jesus was giving one of the, probably the best gospel sermon you'll ever hear, and that's the Sermon on the Mount. And through starting in chapter 5 and going through chapter 7, he gave us many lessons on how to live our lives, not to worry about certain things, how to treat our brothers and sisters. And this is one of the sections where he was teaching on how we should treat our brothers and sisters in Christ. So if you look at Matthew chapter 7, let's go ahead and read the first 5 verses so we can get a good context here. Judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce you will be judged, and with the measure you use it will be measured to you. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how do you say to your brother, "Let me take the speck out of your eye," when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So let's examine this passage and let's see what Jesus is really saying here. We all know what verse 1 says, "Judge not that you be not judged." Verse 2 says, "For with the judgment you pronounce you will be judged, and with the measure you use it will be measured to you." What's he saying there? What Jesus is trying to say is be careful with how you judge people. The standard that you use to judge others will be measured back to you. Now this was more or less a teaching against the Pharisees. The Pharisees were a group of Jews who were around during this time when Jesus was doing his earthly ministry, and they were going around, they bound hard laws on the people. They were more concerned about their outward appearance than their inner appearance. In fact, in Matthew chapter 23, Jesus pronounces this whole series of woes upon the Pharisees for the way they lived and the burden they put on the people. But they were very quick to point out the faults of others, but not seeing it within themselves. So Jesus here is telling them that don't judge based on a personal agenda, and don't judge people hardly just to ridicule them. This kind of judgment that you use will be measured back to you. It kind of, in some way, kind of hits the whole idea of karma. You know, what you sow, you shall reap, but not so much karma in that sense. But basically, what you do, how you treat others, will come back to you at some point. So in verses 3 and 4, he gives an example here. He says, "Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but you do not notice the log that is in your own eye? For how can you say to your brother, 'Let me take the speck out of your eye,' when there's a log in your own eye?" Jesus liked to use some exaggeration sometimes in his parables just to kind of get the point across. And this is one of them here where he says, a speck, meaning like a little bit of, I think the Greek word for speck is like sawdust. Like you got basically a little bit of sawdust in your brother's eye, but you have a whole log, or some versions say a plank, in your own eye. And you think about a plank, or even a log, like it's too big to fit into your normal eye. But that's the kind of exaggeration he's trying to get across, is that one person had less sin in his life while the other had great sin in his life. And here the person with the great sin is trying to pick out the sin of the brother with just a speck in his eye. And this was exactly what the Pharisees were doing. They were going around pointing their fingers at other people, going around pointing out everybody else's sins, but they would refuse to see their own sin. Have you ever, anybody ever asked you to proofread, like if you're writing a paper for a college class, has anybody ever asked you to proofread their paper? Or maybe you've asked somebody to do that? In college, I was notorious for doing this because I stunk at writing papers. Grammar was never my strong suit. English, just, English language I don't get sometimes. And I'd always have somebody else proofread my papers for mistakes because I never could catch them myself. And, and some people would ask me to read theirs. And at first, when I first started doing it, I said, no, I'm not very good at doing this. But as I would read some of my friends' papers, I did start noticing there were little mistakes, and I could circle them and point them out to them. Well, it's easier to do that when it's somebody else's paper. When it's your own paper, you've put so much time and effort into writing it. You know what it says. You know basically what each paragraph was there. So when you're reading it, you read it the way you wanted it to say in your mind, but you're not actually reading it closely to see what's actually there. Sometimes the misspellings, your brain doesn't see it, whereas somebody else who reads it, they'll see it. Same thing happens with our lives. We make all kinds of excuses to verify the actions we do. Sometimes we even know they're wrong, but we want to do them anyway, so we'll find every little excuse in the book to do them. When people try to point those out, we get defensive. But it's easy for us to point at other people and see the faults in their own lives. And that's just what Jesus is trying to get across here, is that here is somebody with great sin in their life, but yet they're pointing out all the little things in other people's lives. So what does he tell them in verse 5? He says, you hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your own brother's eye. What he's saying here is obviously 2 eyes are better than 1. If you remove the plank, you can see your brother more clearly. Now what Jesus is not trying to say here is that, get your life right, take the sin out of your life so that you can start pointing fingers and judging others. What he's saying here is that if you remove the sin from your life and get it out of your way, you will see more clearly to help your brother with his struggles. And that's really what judging is all about. Judging is not there for us to ridicule folks. It's not there for us to point out how great we are and how bad somebody else is. It's not there to make other people feel bad. When we judge others, we're supposed to be helping them. That's the whole point of why we make judgment calls on our brethren. John chapter 7, verse 24, Jesus says, do not judge by appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Or right judgment, as my version says. So that's the kind of judgment we need to use. So let's make some applications in our lives. How can we judge with righteous judgment like Jesus told us to do, and not judge according to what the world judges people?